let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And honestly, we could have not done it without this man. I must be honest. The Eagles might have a guy that maybe they saw as a villain, but realistically, he might have been the hero. We're going to talk about that. Also, today we have Fran Duffy on the show. That's going to be a lot of fun. We have a nice little interview with him, so be sure to check that out at the end of the video. But I want to talk about Carson Wentz, man. I want to talk about who the Philadelphia Eagles might realistically be without Carson Wentz. So, I mean, y'all know who it is, man. It's your boy Joe Castro, a.k.a. Philly Fresco, and it is another episode of Philly, the podcast. So we're going to hop right into this because I don't want to make this a long, drawn-out video like I do sometimes. So we're going to hop right into it, man. Shout out to Jeff Kerr. Posted this. I've seen a whole bunch of different, we got this for Carson Wentz. We got that for Carson Wentz. This seemed to be the most, plotted out. I'm going to leave the actual link in the description if you guys want to check out the full article. I think you definitely should because he kind of explains how all these are, recouped from Carson Wentz's deal. So Jeff Kerr said technically the Carson Wentz deal did not end with Cooper DeJean. What the Eagles received was Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Kyron Johnson, Jalen Carter, Cooper DeJean, Jalix Hunt, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., a 2025 fourth and fifth round pick. So realistically, I understand that going back to that, time and when we actually did trade Carson Wentz, we took on all that dead money. At the moment, it was the most in history, in NFL history. Now it's not even close anymore. He started a trend with that. But looking back to that, people thought, oh, you guys are done. There's no way you're going to make it out of this hole. Jalen Hurts was thrusted into the starting position. We got very, I don't want to say lucky, but he went out there and did what he was supposed to do. He's now our franchise guy. You gave a big deal to Carson Wentz, who we thought was going to be our franchise guy. Bunch of, personality things, on the field things, not being able to be on the field type things. And that just didn't work out. But the haul that you get back, because Carson Wentz, I don't believe he's with the Rams now, if I'm not mistaken. He's a backup for the Rams or the Chiefs, one of the two. I can't remember. Either way, he's not a starter in the league anymore. They took a chance with him in Indianapolis. We got the best out of that deal because he played 75% plus snaps. We got a first round pick out of them, and then we start trading. Then you got Howie. So, I mean, you basically were able to create a core on your offense by letting go of Carson Wentz, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown are lifers, right? They both just got their extension. They are lifetime Eagles. They are not going anywhere. That was probably the biggest, coup. We haven't had great wide receivers in how long? So to have two of, I would damn near say top 15 at the very worst. Top 15 at the very, very worst, I think that we have right there. As far as individual, like A.J. Brown to me is a top 5 guy. Devontae Smith, you can make I think he's a top 10 guy. You can make an argument all the way up to 13, 14, 15 maybe. So I'll say top 15 at worst. Kyron Johnson obviously didn't necessarily work out. It is what it is. Jalen Carter, I mean, we saw what he did his rookie year. We're only expecting him to get better, right? Cooper DeJean, that's just insane to get him in the second round, but him being a part of this is just crazy as heck. Jalix Hunt, we'll see what he becomes. Me and Fran Duffy did talk about Jalix Hunt, and it was really, some of the stuff he said was very, very motivating. I'm very excited to see what Jalix Hunt will be now for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I mean, you brought him home. So shout out to Carson Wentz for bringing him home because that's what he deserves. We'll see what he becomes. We also did talk about Jeremiah Trotter also. So that, Fran gave me some insight on what he thinks Trotter could be. Then the 4th and 5th round picks. I mean, you're just adding cherries on top. It's just amazing. I'm going to be 100%. It's amazing what Howie Roseman has been able to do. Not just with the draft picks, but with this culture, right? Because if you look at this team, there's a lot of reason for there to be turmoil in this team. There's a lot of reason. Yeah, everybody seems to be even more excited about this year, even more excited to prove that last year was not what it really is, right? It was a mirage. That's it's such an and we even talked about this with Fran. It's like it's just so amazing to have a team that you feel like is never really all the way out. We didn't have a good end to our season last year, but we keep fighting. We keep finding ways to improve and to fix our mistakes, and this is no different. Howie Roseman, you are a god. I do not care. You are a god. The things that he has been able to do with negativity. That's the thing too, because the Carson Wentz situation was a negative situation. It wasn't like, oh, we got an amazing quarterback, let's see what we can get for him and then just rebuild everything. No, it was a tough situation. You're coming off 2017 where you win a Super Bowl, which is amazing, but you have an old core. You're gonna have to, we saw Fletcher now leave, we saw Jason Kelsey, excuse me, you saw Travis I can't talk. We saw, Zach Ertz. I really just forgot his name for a second. We saw Zach Ertz leave. We saw a bunch of, guys that we thought, Malcolm Jenkins, that we thought were going to be here for the lifetime of their career. We saw them leave. And he still, some of them obviously retired, but he was still able to go out there, rebuild. Now we have a young core of guys moving forward. And it all links back to Carson Wentz. So I'm going to say, I'm sorry, Carson. I apologize, man. I apologize. Thank you. Maybe this was what he had planned the whole time. Maybe he was an Eagles fan and he was like, you know what? I'm going to stink it up. I'm going to get us a first-round pick. I'm going to get you guys. I don't know. I know that's a stretch, but I'm very excited. I think that this just shows, even on another level, the genius that we have as a GM. And not just that, but the culture that we have as a team, that they're just so willing to improve and to move forward, right? Even when things look bad, they move forward. So I love it. I just wanted to say that because I think it's kind of funny, kind of ironic, but I want to know what you guys think. And lastly, I do want to ask you all a question because, look, at the end of the day, we are all family, right? So I'm thinking of changing the logo. I want to know what you all think. So if you like the first one, that's the original one. If you like the second one, that's the new one. You guys let me know in the comments, 1 or 2, all right? So the original Philly on the left is going to be number 1. The new one is going to be on the right. So 1 or 2. Let me know what you guys think. But other than that, I don't want to get too deep into, talking about Carson Wentz. It might hurt my feelings a little bit. But no, realistically, it's time for the interview. Shout out to Fran Duffy. And if you are watching this, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, join the family. We're on the road to 1 billion, so please help me out getting there. But let's get into it, man. I got a very, very special guest with me today. You guys know him. I mean, he's taught a bunch of us the game as far as the X's and O's, how things work out. A good friend of the show, lucky to have him on so many times. We got Fran Duffy in the building. Fran, how's it going, man?
Joe, it's going great. Hope everything's well with you. Obviously, it's going to be the light part of the off season coming up. The players are back in the building in Philadelphia. Obviously, OTAs and mini camps going to be kicking off here in a couple weeks. But now that the draft and most of free agency has died down, it can be a little bit quieter here over the next couple weeks.
We're living through pictures right now. We're living through workout pictures and tweets. So it's going to be tough, but I'm excited for this season, man. But I want to hop into this because, we talked about it a little bit pre-show. Crazy draft, a lot of fun. The Eagles did very well. A crazy night might be an understatement, but I want to know, what was your initial reaction when you saw the draft picks, and was there a draft pick that maybe stood out to you most?
I think a lot of excitement, certainly. I mean, the ability to come away from this draft with both Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, to me, is outstanding because all throughout the process, because I watched Quinyon Mitchell for the first time and Cooper DeJean for the first time back in the summer. And I feel like Quinyon was a guy early on I pegged as this guy's going to be a first-round pick. And you don't typically see guys from the MAC come in and reach that level of draft status. But to me, watching him, you just checked so many boxes. And so for me, watching him go through the process, he had another strong senior season after a good junior year. And then he goes down to the Senior Bowl. He quiets some doubters down there. I thought he was one of the best players on the field for the couple days that he was at practice. And then, goes to the combine. He checks that box. You talk with him there. He checks that box. Like, everything you hear about him is just outstanding off the field. So to come away with Quinyon Mitchell and then Cooper DeJean, who to me was just a great football player. And watching him, people I think got caught up in what is he? Is he a corner? Is he a nickel? Or is he a safety? I think that we get lost sometimes when we get into those kind of discussions about, is he this or is he this? We don't know. Versus, oh, he actually can do this and this and this. It's not like oh, I'm not sure. It's no, he actually can do everything. And so now you still have to kind of find a role for him. But to me, like that's why one of the things I've said about Cooper DeJean through the process is there are a lot of pathways to success for him. It's not like, oh, well, if he doesn't work out here, like I'm not sure exactly what the next path is for him. If it doesn't work out for him in one spot, you feel, all right, look, he's got the skill set. He can go and play here too. So to me, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, they were my two favorite corners in the draft, Joe. And so to come away with that from that draft and say, okay, you get both corners. And I went back and forth with who's my favorite between those two guys. And for different reasons, while they both share a lot of similarities, there are differences to their game. And I said, I think DeJean might be the better football player right now, but I think Mitchell's the best, like pure outside corner in this draft. So being able to come away with both, that's a huge coup for the Eagles.
Yeah, they made your job easy. You don't have to pick between your children. That's always a good thing. Now, I do want to kind of I want to key in on two players because I feel like there were steals throughout this draft. There was some really high ceilings, some really high floors with some of these players. But I want to key in on Jalix Hunt and Jeremiah Trotter. Obviously, two really good players, really athletic players, have some development ahead of them. And obviously, everybody loves Jeremiah Trotter and who his father is. But I want to know, what do you see their fit being in this Philadelphia Eagles defense moving forward, and how can they kind of solidify their spot?
Well, we know the drill at this point is that it's all about competition, and so when they arrive here in the coming days for like rookie camp, obviously that's the first step. But as the full squad comes together for OTAs and then for mini camp later this month, that's where competition starts to begin. You get into training camp, and then we'll just see how the depth chart shakes out. But as far as both guys as prospects, there is a lot to like. Obviously, I watched Jeremiah Trotter Jr. last summer. I want to say it was last June, where I first kind of watched him, and he's been on the radar for forever. Obviously, coming from Philadelphia, big time recruit, knowing who his dad was, obviously. But to me, a really tough, instinctive linebacker, just has a knack for finding the football. Extremely productive over the last couple of years, and not just in the run game, like racking up tackles, but Joe, impact plays. TFLs, sacks, 13 sacks in his career. Also a ton of production in the passing game in coverage. And that's one of the things I think that can get lost about him is like, oh, well, he wasn't going to test really well. You kind of see that he's not like an A-plus athlete on film. But, I remember people saying a lot of the same things about TJ Edwards when Edwards was coming out of Wisconsin. But Edwards always found a way to be able to get into pass lanes and create disruption on the football. A lot of PBUs in the middle of the field in zone coverage, a lot of interceptions. It felt like a yearly occurrence in every summer was up TJ Edwards, a leaping interception in training camp, and that showed up in games as well. He made some great plays in the intermediate part of the field. And Jeremiah Trotter Jr. always showed the ability to do that at Clemson as well. He had 2 pick sixes in his career, had a number of PBUs, some diving interceptions. So this is a guy, despite what the athletic profile was perceived to be, he's got a really good knack for being able to play in space, especially zone coverage, and being able to find his way to the football there. I think when you look at Jalix Hunt, he's much different in that you're looking at an outstanding athletic profile and honestly a rare athletic profile for a guy as big and as long as he is, to be as explosive as he is, truly unique. And one of the things, as all the draft picks were coming through, I'm writing articles for PhiladelphiaEagles.com, just kind of introducing fans to the pick. And, I tried to find, okay, what's a stat or two that kind of sets this guy apart? And some players, it was some of the things they did on the field using some PFF metrics, right? And other guys, you're looking at athletic testing. And for me, looking back at Jalix Hunt, when you look at his length, which I believe was 34 3/8 from around arm length, right? So if you set that, all right, let's set the benchmark at 34 1/4 inch arms, long arms. You look at his explosiveness in the broad jump, which was over 10 feet. I think I set the mark at 128 inches in the broad. So all right, like 2 really good numbers, length and explosiveness. Over the last 10 years, guys that were drafted in the top 100 with those 2 benchmarks. It's a very short list, Joe. Myles Garrett, great player. Danielle Hunter, 3rd round pick, great player. Will McDonald, who was a first-round pick, was an athletic freak out of Iowa State last year for the Jets. We'll see what he does in an expanded role this year. And Odafe Owe from the Baltimore Ravens, who was a top 40 pick a couple years ago and has really started to come on, and he was a freak show athlete. That's the list. So when you're looking at just the body type and the explosiveness, the skill set, he is not a finished product yet. Coming from Houston Christian, a converted college safety at Cornell, the athletic movement is there, but you can see he's still got a ways to go. But when you're trying to bet on a profile, that's the kind of profile you're trying to bet on, right? A great kid who's going to work hard, who has outstanding physical tools. That's the kind of gamble you take late in day 2 into day 3. And so we've seen the Eagles make these kind of gambles in the past. And I think when you look at Jalen Hunt, that is a worthwhile gamble, especially, again, knowing the character of the kid and the work ethic that he's going to put into it. There's a lot to like there with the profile for Jalen Hunt.
Yeah, when I heard him on the phone calling Howie Roseman Big Pimpin', I was like, oh, he's an Eagle. He belongs in Philadelphia. That's awesome. I didn't know that about that. That is a short list and a good list to be on. I'm excited for him. I think that the Eagles were able to really get some developmental pieces that are going to be very big for the future. I mean, we see the guys that we have already that we're able to extend and everything. It just feels good. It feels like Philadelphia is the place people want to be. I love it. Now, offensively, we also were able to kind of attack that. I know a lot of Eagles fans probably thought that would be the first thing we attacked, but they waited a little bit, but still got some really good players. I want to kind of key in on the playmakers as far as who we got, as far as Aniyah Smith, Johnny Wilson, Will Shipley. These guys have some really, really unique traits to them, especially Johnny Wilson. He's like 6'10", it feels like. But you got some really unique traits there. How do you see these young guys kind of coming in, and how do you think they might fit into a Kellen Moore offense year 1?
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Wilson enters the league right now. He's the biggest receiver in football. He's got the longest arms of any receiver drafted in the last 10 years. He's the tallest receiver drafted in the last 10 years. He's got the biggest wingspan of any receiver in the last 10 years. So outstanding size at the position, but he's not a stiff athlete. This is a guy that's got quickness in and out of breaks. And I did a piece that just went up on Tuesday on the Philadelphia Eagles YouTube page, where I just went back and broke down film of all of these players that we're talking about. And, going back and finding clips to be able to pull for this breakdown of Johnny Wilson. It's like, all right, like I want to show it's not just his ability to go up and win those contested catches, right? Pluck the ball off the top of the corner's head on a red zone fade, right? His game is much more than that. I want to be able to show like his quickness in and out of breaks and some of the route running chops that he does have to create separation. Honestly, there were so many clips to be able to pick from, and I picked some of my favorite ones. But his ability to set defensive backs up, the ways that he's able to kind of sink his weight and get in and out of cuts at that size. I mean, that's 230 pounds. You guys typically look a little bit leggy. It's a little bit slow getting out of the break. I mean, those kind of routes are typically kind of tough for those guys with that body type. But, with Johnny Wilson, that was not something that showed up. He showed the ability to get in and out really, really efficiently. He's got some issues that he's going to have to, look to continue to improve upon. He had more drops than you'd like to see the last couple of years. But this is a guy that can make grabs that not many other receivers are capable of making. And again, with his movement skills, this is a guy that can line up inside or outside. And so I'm excited to see how he looks, in this receiver room. And I mean, just a complete opposite body type from Aniyah Smith, who was a 5th-round pick for the Eagles. And he's more on the smaller side with your traditional slot receiver build. He actually played some running back for Texas A&M early in his career as well, and even got carries out of the backfield this past season. So you're talking about a versatile playmaker who's really good with the ball in his hands. The yak absolutely shows up with Aniyah Smith. His toughness shows up with and without the football. I thought he got better as a route runner this year compared to last summer when I watched him from 2022. And so you see a guy that's continuing to improve. He's quick in and out of cuts. He's really good with the ball in his hands. And again, that toughness, that's really important for a guy that's going to play a lot in the slot. And so I think when you look at Aniyah Smith, I think that there's a profile there you like. He's got return chops as well. Scored two touchdowns on punt returns over the course of his career with A&M. And then you get to Will Shipley. As you mentioned, he was the first one drafted from this trio. And to me, Shipley, what stands out about him, just his instincts and his fluidity as a runner. He's not the biggest and he's not the most explosive, but one thing that I wrote down while watching him is, while you could watch him in a vacuum and look and say, all right, look, this guy's probably not going to run super, super fast at the combine. He always found ways to run faster than the guy who's chasing him. And that's one of those things, the play speed element. I know saying that about Puka Nacua last year. It's I know he didn't run great, but like when you watch him on film, it never looks like a huge issue, and he was still able to create some big plays. And I think when you look at Will Shipley, what he does in space is some of his best work. I think that he's got outstanding vision out in the open field, and honestly, that's what made him a really good kick returner at college. And he was an All-America, first team All-American last year, or second team All-American in 2022. So after his sophomore season as a running back, as an all-purpose weapon, and as a kick returner. Like in all three, got All-American honors. So I think when you're looking at Will Shipley, this is a guy that can impact the game in a lot of different ways. He's got really fluid hands. He's a good route runner. And again, I talked about that spatial awareness, that ability to find green grass out in space. That is a natural trait for guys. That's a tough thing to be able to learn. And I think Will Shipley has that. So I'm excited about his skill set. He's got a 4-down skill set moving into the NFL. I think when you look at all three of those players, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about all three.
That's awesome. Yeah, and quick tangent. We both were at the Senior Bowl. I saw at the Senior Bowl. Malik Mustafa is a guy that I really, really liked at the Senior Bowl. And I interviewed him at the Senior Bowl. His mother ended up following me on Twitter. We talk every now and then. And they actually work out together, I guess, every day. They played Pop Warner football together. I believe Shipley's father was the coach for their Pop Warner team. So I just think that's pretty cool. A kid that I really liked, I was following, ends up having a connection to a guy that we actually draft. So I always think that's cool. But yeah, I'm excited to see. I know he has the work ethic, and I think that was kind of a common theme. And I wanted to ask you this. Maybe you have a little bit more insight on this, but we heard Red Star players when they were talking about the guys that they drafted. Can you give us maybe what that might mean to a Howie Roseman and draft terms, I guess?
Yeah, so the idea of a Red Star player, and the Eagles aren't the only team that does this. I would say most teams do something along these lines. And basically where before the draft, everybody, all the scouts, everybody that was on the road evaluating players, doing all the background work on players, has the ability to kind of stand up and nominate one player from their area where you say, you know what, this is a guy, and you're taking all the intangibles into this. So it's, the work ethic, the makeup, everything, what this guy stands for. He's an Eagle, right? Or, all of those different things that you want to throw in there. But is best a representation of a guy that's going to come in and help establish and maintain the culture that we've got set in the building. Last year, Sidney Brown was one of those guys where he was a Red Star player for multiple people in the scouting department. And this year, I think Howie had said in the post-draft press conference that there were a handful, didn't say exactly who was, but there were a handful of these guys. And I think when you look at it, number one, it helps, validate your scouts that are on the road for 2/3 of the year trying to find these players and unearth these players for your staff, to give them I think even added voice and say, like, yeah, this is a guy that I want to stand on the table for, and say, like, this is a guy that we definitely want to try and bring in. But also, look, every team, I listen to press conferences from all around the NFL. Every coach, every general manager, everybody will speak to culture. Oh, we want to bring in guys that are tough and they're, that represent what we want. But not everybody puts their money where their mouth is with that, right? And not everybody's going to go and say that, yeah, these are the types of players we want to find. And honestly, it's been a trend with the Eagles over the last few seasons where you're seeing them bring in players, yes, that have traits and have something that you can work with, but then also the character is something that has always been a big part of the evaluation and the projection with players to the NFL, is saying, okay, yes, you've got traits, but if you don't have the work ethic, if you don't have the want to be able to reach that ceiling, then what good are the traits, right? And there's an old saying that talent sets the floor and character sets the ceiling, with players, and that's something that goes back a ways. And I think when you look at the Eagles and the way that they've drafted, it goes back to what we were saying with Jalen Hunt. If look, having that explosiveness, having that length, that's great. But if you're not going to put the work in to improve and get better with your craft and put extra time in, you look at Jalen Hurts, right? And that's an extreme, right? But that's why Jalen Hurts, in the second round was a worthwhile bet for the Eagles back in 2020. Is okay, he's got that ability to he's got the physical traits, but he also has the character, the work ethic, and all those intangibles to be able to reach that ceiling.
Definitely. Jalen was definitely and still is a Red Star player in my book. So that's awesome. I was wondering what that was. I heard different kind of, mentions of what it may be. Now, I got a couple more questions and then I'll get you out of here. But everybody's going to talk about the top guys, right? Everybody knows Quignon's good, Cooper's good, Jalix is exciting. Are there any draftees or maybe undrafted free agents, because I see you're already kind of diving into those, that you look at and you're like, this kid might shock some people, might be a surprise to make this roster?
I think that all those guys are going to find ways to be able to compete and find a spot. Look, it's going to be competitive because this is already a roster with established veterans and plenty of depth up and down at different positions. So it's definitely going to be a battle for a lot of those guys that were day 3 picks. Some of the guys we've talked about. We haven't talked about Dylan McMahon. The 6th round pick out of NC State at center. We haven't talked about Trevor Keegan, the guard from Michigan. But look, all of these guys. It's an uphill battle for sure when you're looking at trying to compete for those roster spots. So, I think there's obviously going to be a lot of eyes, a lot of discussion about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and his ability to come in and compete for playing time. But even still, like, you have Nakobe Dean coming back. You brought in Devin White. You've got other linebackers there that are established. So I think honestly, I'd put all of them on a level playing field and say, let's just see how this thing shakes out. And let's let the spring play out. Let's let the summer play out and see what happens.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun spring. It's going to be a very, very fun spring. Just a lot, like you said, competition, a lot of football being played, and a lot of personalities. I think that's probably going to be the most fun of it, just kind of seeing what this team is. Now you got kind of a new core of great players. Now, last question I want to ask you, Fran. I want to put you on the spot because you do this at the Combine a lot to a lot of the young men, so I want to put you on the spot. You're always asking the young men, who are we going to be talking about next? You actually asked that, and they told you Jeremiah Trotter a year ahead. So I want to ask you, looking ahead to 2025, I know I want to make it seem like I'm putting you on the spot, but I know you're probably already looking at guys. Is there anybody on the watch list for you in 2025?
There definitely is. It looks like it's going to be a fun group of defensive linemen next year. It looks like the offensive tackle class has a couple names that people are high on. I haven't done like nearly the amount of film work. Obviously, that begins now. And honestly, Joe, it's like one of my favorite parts of the evaluation process is getting that first look at players and kind of setting that tone for yourself, especially because there's not a lot being talked about with these guys yet. And so it's not like you're going to be affected by how other people view them or, there's high expectations on this player. You're going in completely clean. So I'm very excited to begin that process. But to answer your question, yes, I do have my notes ready. I got my watch list ready in terms of who we're watching. I don't have concrete thoughts on many of these guys yet, but from what I understand, the line of scrimmage next year so far looks like it's going to be good. But I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, it's going to be – I'm ready for the draft next year. I'm ready for the season right now. But, yeah, obviously looking a little bit ahead to the draft. But, hey, Fran, I appreciate you so much. Like I said, it's always a pleasure and honor to have you on the show. Before I do let you go, is there anything we should be looking out for? I know you've been doing a lot of film work, putting out a lot of great content. What should we be looking for next?
Well, yeah, I would say for everybody that hasn't yet, go check out the piece I did on the Eagles rookie on the draft picks. All 9 players, a bunch of plays broken down from their college tape, from the Senior Bowl, things like that. So you can go check that out on the Eagles YouTube page. That would be the thing I would say. Make sure you check that out if you have not yet.
Definitely. I've already checked it out, but I'll go watch it again. Why not? You know what I'm saying? That's the point. Hey, Fred, I appreciate you so much. I'm sure I'll see you at another event pretty soon, man. But, yeah, that's all I got for you. Is there anything you want to say to these people before you get out of here?
No, I appreciate it, Joe. Thanks again for having me. And look, it's gonna be a fun rest of the summer. I'm excited for training camp. There's gonna be a lot of positions that will be a lot of fun to watch, and we'll see again how all these competitions shake out.
Definitely. And I'll reach back out to you. I'm sure I'll pick your brain again. But I appreciate everybody that's tuned in. Be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe. Definitely go check out everything that the Eagles drop because it's always amazing. They've been doing an amazing job. But other than that, y'all know what it is, man. It is Fly, Eagles, Fly. And we are out here. Peace!
Everywhere. This is for you.
Yeah. Fly, Eagles, fly. On the team. Touchdown. Time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a Bird Gang Nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling on Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Deshaun, hunting like Randall. Season here, early time to do them in. Your boy Philly Fresco. Thanks for tuning in.